So when you go into consumption, and this is something that Rajiv is going to come and demonstrate to you guys, is one of the core things that we've always been asked by customers is, look, we've got this great little Nutanix clusters. It's all centrally managed by IT, but I've got lots of these requests coming in from end users, whether it's business groups and engineering, marketing, support, and so forth. Today it's through trouble tickets and something that's much more manual. They have to place requests in and so forth. Could you find a way to democratize access? Could you find a way to actually give them true multi-tenant access while retaining the control in the central IT side? And that's really what we are now doing in the latest release that's shipping, is this ability for end users to get the flexibility and the freedom to actually have their own VMs, their own containers, while centralized IT retains the control. So with one-click self-service that's going to be shipping in version 5.0, that's coming up shortly, you can now essentially log in using a different interface, which Rajiv is going to show you, other than Prism. Consume, deploy your own VMs and containers, have your own projects, manage your quotas and so forth, while your centralized administration can still have the fine-grained controls to ensure that the right capacity and optimization is being done across the enterprise. And so that's the one-click consumption side. And before we get into the demos, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what do we mean by saying one-click operations. Now, some of you guys know this in the form of the various things that we already do, right? We do one-click upgrades and so forth. And even in upgrades that many of you have come to adore and like, we've actually kept doing more. Instead of just doing one-click upgrades across the hypervisor or firmware from Nutanix, we've actually taken it to the next level where you can now upgrade the full stack all the way from the hypervisor OS down all the way into the VMC firmware stack, right? So it's completely automated. And not only is it done with a whole bunch of one-click automation inside the cluster, we have now exposed a whole bunch of APIs, so various third-party partners of ours, especially large-scale automation fabrics such as Puppet and Chef and so forth, can natively manage Nutanix as a first-class citizen. And especially, and in this particular category, one specific partner that has gone above and beyond in terms of providing native integration is Puppet. And to talk more about it, let me just invite Tim on stage, who's from Puppet and been kind enough to join us today. Tim, come on up. So, it's a quick question. What's with the logo?
So there's actually a lot of Puppet history in this logo. This is a DAG. It's a directed acyclic graph. And so part of the secret sauce that underlies our technology, which is an automation and orchestration platform, is the understanding of all the dependencies across all your resources that you're managing with Puppet. So we don't care if it's on a mainframe, if it's a development environment that you have in AWS, if it's a mission-critical system that you have in Nutanix in your data center. We understand all the relationships across those, and so we kind of embedded it in our new logo that we released.
That looks, actually, when I first saw it, that looks more like our election poll results over the last couple of years.
It's going to be a rough trip home.
So tell us a little bit about, the Puppet Nutanix relationship and the integrations that we have got going.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. There's two big things that I think that we see happening here, at least in the here and now. And the first is around portability, and then the second is around some of the simplified operations that you just talked about. One of the things that Puppet's really great at is you get a common language for managing all the things in your data center. And so what we see is our customers end up using Puppet to help them adopt new technologies. They define their workloads in Puppet, and so it makes it really easy to move them around. And so the first thing is, as people are moving to, let's say they've defined some of their workloads that are running in bare metal or maybe more traditional infrastructure in their data center, and they want to move to Nutanix, they've already defined it in Puppet. So it makes that really straightforward. So that's the first thing. The second thing is some of the stuff that we're doing now around the kind of one-click operations that you just talked through, which is part of the rollout if you're using Nutanix to do one-click operations and start to push either new infrastructure out or spin it out and manage it. With Puppet, you could say, well, as I spin up these new instances or these new VMs, I know it's going to be a database server. So I'm going to use Puppet to orchestrate that automation and fire it up as a MySQL database or SQL server. Or I know that there's going to be a new fleet of VMs that's going to run an app server. So you can have Puppet under the covers then as part of this really simple way of provisioning and then operating your infrastructure, lay that down for you in the Nutanix world.
Got it. So tell us a little bit about where this relationship is going, not just in terms of just the product integration, but also the market evolution a little bit.
There's two things I'm excited about where this partnership's going. The first is around orchestration, and then the second is a little bit more around some of the optimization that you do and the rich data that we have. So on the orchestration front, I saw in a handful of slides talking about moving up the stack. One of the things that Puppet does really well is people use us to automate both the provisioning and then ongoing maintenance of their core infrastructure, the middleware that sits on top of it, and then the applications as well. And so one of the things that I envision us working on more in the future is as you're provisioning multi-node applications, or even just infrastructure like various cloud services or container-based workflows, being able to orchestrate those as part of the really simple operations. So that's all around orchestration. I think the second thing that I'm excited about is some of the Nutanix capabilities for optimizing the underlying infrastructure, I think can work really well in concert with the data that Puppet has. So for example, if you defined in Puppet, well, here's how I want my database to run, and we know coming back from Nutanix, well, this is what you actually have going on with your optimization, you can have rules and inputs already to kind of on the fly be able to optimize some of the core infrastructure that you have running. And so, you've talked about a bit about one-click operations. This gets you even closer to probably zero-click, where you can have much more dynamic and elastic and smarter utilization going on under the covers.
That's right. Zero-touch operations driven by data and analytics from the system that, over a period of time, they just give you a little bit of insights into that, but the system is going to become a lot more self-learning, machine intelligent. We're going to be talking about some of those things now, but essentially capturing some of that data so that we can actually make automation a lot more simpler.
Exactly, yeah.
Great stuff, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us here.
Right? Yeah, likewise. So I know we've spent a lot of time on slides, so let's just get right into the demo here. So to talk about the full portfolio of these one-click operations and, to actually show you what is creating some of this delight that you've seen behind some of the tweets that I know most of you are familiar with. Let me invite Rajiv on stage to talk through some of the latest things that are coming out in 5.0. Welcome, Rajiv.
So can we switch over to this? So we talked about Amazon.com earlier today, Sunil, and Amazon's really done a tremendous job of making retail shopping really a delightful experience for their customers. And they have a long history of innovating in this space. Right? They've created many mechanisms for it. You talked about some of the one-click checkout, the one-click delivery, and so on. But there are two things that really stood out to us when we were trying to get some inspiration from them. One is the sheer simplicity of the Amazon.com retail website. Whether you know exactly what you want, or you're just doing some comparison shopping, or maybe just browsing in general, it's really easy to find what you want. And they could have stopped there, but over the last few years, they've actually gone beyond that and invested a lot of effort in deep machine learning that gives really, really insightful recommendations and makes you look at products that you may not even be aware of, and that really, really has taken them to the next level. And if you think about it, the really impressive part is that they can do this at scale. It's simplicity at scale, right? Amazon's got bigger inventory than any physical store, maybe 10x, 100x more than any physical store. Yet it's far easier to find things on Amazon than in an actual retail store that you might walk into. So taking a leaf from their book, we actually developed two new features earlier this year. One was around an entity browser that really gives you a clutter-free way of visualizing large scales of entities, whether they be clusters, containers, hosts, or VMs, in a very, very clutter-free manner, and then also being able to zoom in an intuitive way to any specifics that you want over there. The second part was to take search and make it front and center in our interface. So instead of having to navigate complex navigational menus, you just search for what you want. And taking that a little bit further, we also made the search actionable. So you can actually do management operations right from the search bar. So let's take a look at that.
All right.
So this is Prism Central, and let's start by searching for something, right? So if I want to look at, say, my VMs, I can say very straightforward. It's like, just say VMs. It shows me some VMs. But I can go further now with the 5.0 release. We can actually start specifying attributes on these VMs. So maybe I'm only interested in VMs on a particular cluster. I have a cluster here called Surge. And maybe I want to only look at ones where there's some actual activity going on. So let me say with IOPS greater than, let's pick 5. So this actually gives me just those VMs where the IOPS are greater than the number I specified. So there's about 5 VMs of that. Now, I have this information, I have these 5 VMs, but I probably want to dig in a little bit more into what's happening over here, right?
Yeah, VMs with greater than 5 IOPS, that must be the managers.
Well,
Not really doing much.
Some of them are a little bit more than what the managers could do, right? So I can go from here directly into the entity browser by saying explore filtered VMs. And this brings up the entity browser with the filter pre-applied. So I don't have to go and redo that. That's one of the new features in 5.0, which we really like. And over here, the same views apply that we've had before. This is the grid view. It tells me a few things. I can switch to getting more detail with a tiles view. And at this point, I might be more interested in performance statistics as opposed to just general information. So I can change my focus to focus on performance. And now I can see my read bandwidth, write bandwidth, latencies, and so on right over here. So very, very quick way to find specific VMs with some attributes and get more information about them. This is great when you know what you want, and it's a few things that you want to look at. What about when I want to do things at a larger scale? So let me clear the filter over here. And so this gives me all my 60 VMs over here, which is a little bit hard to visualize with the tiles view. So let me switch to the circles view. So the circles view lets me look at a large number of VMs in a very, very compact form factor. Here I can see all 60 VMs in just 3 lines. I can then group them by different ways. So I can group them by hypervisor. And we can see some of them are running on AHV, some of them are running on ESX. And I can color them in different ways. Right now they're colored by power state. Some of them are powered off. The red ones are powered off. The green ones are powered on. But for example, if I wanted to see how my CPUs are allocated, for example, I could color this by virtual CPU count. And now I can see that the green VMs over here are really big ones with 14 vCPUs assigned to them. So very quickly I can look at patterns across a large number of VMs. So now one thing you may have noticed, Sunil, is that some of these VMs are on AHV and some of them are on ESX. Prior to Asterisk, of course, or the 5.0 release, of course, we could manage the storage for both ESX and for AHV. But if you were doing VM operations, that was only possible with AHV VMs. With the 5.0 release, we're actually making it possible for you to perform VM operations, creations, clones, etc., directly on ESX VMs. So if you have an environment where, for some reason you're running test and dev on AHV, you're still uncomfortable about moving production to AHV, so you're running ESX over there, you can still use the same tooling to manage all your VMs. And then when you're ready, you can upgrade your ESX clusters to AHV.
I know this question came up that with all the features and stuff like that, obviously we become more competitive with VMware and all that good stuff. But, like 60-70% of our install base is ESX. If anything, the features that we're adding to the product to actually go double down on ensuring that those customer environments are even more simpler to manage is one of our core priorities. And I think for those people that showed up at .NEXT Vegas, our CMO made the statement, and it's true, which is, we love VMware. We love VMware like our mother-in-law. So to talk more about some things around how we have made sure we stick to our mother-in-law visiting our home, let's talk about our new capabilities.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. So let me clear the filter over here and go back to the grid view. And let's start by trying to clone vCenter VM. So I have a VDI-based image that I loaded beforehand. As you can see, the hypervisor is ESX. I can select that and say clone. And this will just take a few seconds to load up some data. And let's say I want to create, 10 clones?
10 clones.
Let's start creating 10 clones. And what happens now is that this operation has been submitted to Prism. Prism will actually talk to vCenter to do the cloning. So this will not go behind any hidden APIs or anything like that. It goes through vCenter. So the things that depend on vCenter, like DRS and so on, continue to work just fine. And this will take a little bit of time to load.
So what can we do in the meantime, you think?
Well, how about we try the same operation on AHV while we are waiting?
Yeah, let's look at it.
Okay, so let me select a different VM here. I have an Ubuntu VM, which is running on AHV, I believe. And let's take the Ubuntu normal VM over here. And let's say we'll create 10 clones of that as well. And if you just look at that over here, you can see these VMs have already been created. All 10 have been created, right? So that's pretty quick.
So 10 AHV VMs have been cloned already. How many ESX VMs are
Let's go back and take a look at what's happening with our VDI. Well, we have a couple. It's moving. So,
all right.
So,
It's still going. She's old.
Well, mother-in-law's not moving as quickly as she used to be able to.
Okay.
So why does this happen? The point is that if you look at how ESX and vCenter were built, they were really built in an era where, we had single-core CPUs, distributed systems really weren't being built at scale, and more importantly, operations were really being built around human beings doing them as opposed to machines and computers doing them. So vCenter was never really built for large-scale automation, right? So we have Prism, distributed system. We have a storage controllers, distributed system, lots and lots of parallelism on both sides. But all the operations that we have go through this one single VM that then does things sequentially instead of being able to batch operations. On the other hand, with AHV, we architected from the beginning for the modern era, for an era of automation and cloud. So we have a fully distributed control plane. We batch all the operations together, so all 10 clones can happen together. We don't do them one after the other, so it happens really, really quickly.
Got it. So are we doing anything new in AHV now to take this to the next level?
We are actually. So this is the control plane being very, very parallel, right? And if you think about it, another thing's happening on the data plane. The flash architectures are really, really at just their infancy today. So we went from magnetic to flash. That's revolutionized the way we do storage in many ways. But we are really at the beginning, in my opinion. We have NVMe devices that have just started coming out. And then companies like Intel are doing technologies like 3D XPoint, where the latencies are so low and the performance is so high that they have to put in the DIMM channels, that putting them over a PCI bus or a SATA bus is just way too slow. And I really want to emphasize that this is not incremental change that's going to happen. This is there's an inflection point in how we do storage. This is really going to revolutionize how we do computing. And again, the traditional hypervisors weren't built for this architecture. Naturally, they were built a long time ago when magnetic was all we had. So while on the left here, we have VMs. They're running on multi-core processors. We have dozens, of course, today, approaching hundreds in some systems. We have flash devices, which have a lot of built-in parallelism. They have thousands of I/O queues that they can have. Yet we're using very old-fashioned storage protocols, low outstanding requests to talk to them through the hypervisor. And in some cases, even going through a network stack to talk to the storage devices. And that really causes all kinds of constrictions and head-of-line blocking issues. And in AHV, what we have always had the ability to pass through the storage devices directly to our storage controller, which is already multi-threaded. What we're working on right now, this is still in development, is a way for each user VM to have parallel dedicated channels to the storage controller. So we're removing the bottleneck of the storage protocol altogether. And this is still in development. It'll come out sometime next year, hopefully. So let me show you what that's actually capable of. If I go back to this demo, let me go back and look for the Ubuntu VMs. And there's one here called Ubuntu Developer, which is the one we've loaded with this new technology. And if I go over here and launch the console, let me scroll out a bit. Okay. What I'm going to do is to run a benchmark. It's FIO. And we're going to essentially simulate 4K random reads and writes with this new architecture that we're developing. Let me just start the job over here. And if you look at the IOPS on the right, this should start populating very, very quickly now. Yeah, you can see that we're generating from a single VM. Remember, this is just one VM that we're running FIO on. Over 140,000 IOPS, 4K IOPS. So this is really, really an order of magnitude quicker than what we could do earlier. And actually, just to compare with current AHV versus this new technology, what we're going to get is 2x performance increases. You're going to go from about 70K IOPS to over 140, 150K IOPS.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. So, and I think the point is that, look, this is the kind of things that we can actually do by owning the full stack. The things that Apple could do by owning software and hardware together gives us this unique advantage to provide a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of value proposition. So, Rajiv and the gang are going to be at the breakouts, as well as, you have Michael Webster talking about databases in the breakouts and also. So I would encourage all of you guys to spend more time understanding what's coming in AHV in terms of the 2.0 roadmap, because there's a lot of juicy things coming. So good stuff, Rajiv. Is that it? Or?
No, there's more to show.
Okay, there's one more?
There's a couple
more time. We're running out of time. All right.
Well, you talked about the self-service portal. So if you think about it, we're getting all this automation. We're getting this ability to do lots of stuff at machine speeds. It really would be a pity if we had to do this all through an IT administrator. So if an IT administrator has to provision every single VM for you, what's the point of being able to operate, being able to create hundreds and thousands of VMs in one go? So we essentially developed in 5.0 this self-service portal. The self-service portal essentially balances control and visibility for IT with essentially offloading routine administrative tasks like VM provisioning to end users. What the IT admin does is they define projects. For each project, they decide which users have access to it, what operations they can perform, what networks they can access, and then they can optionally place quotas. So they can limit the amount of CPUs, memory, storage that each user can use. Once this has been provisioned, users can log into the self-service portal. They can browse a list of images in a catalog, and they can go ahead and create their own VMs and containers from there. So this is part of the 5.0 release, essentially giving you the combination of granular control for IT and really frictionless self-service for end users. So let's take a look at that. So this is the self-service portal, and I may have timed out over there, so let me just sign out and sign back in.
And so this is a different portal beyond the standard interface of Prism.
Right, it comes built in to the controller VM today, but it's going to be a separate interface.
And this is the kind of interface that's role-based access control into the Nutanix infrastructure.
Exactly.
So through self-service portal, one of the key features that we're delivering, I know it's often asked by our customers, is role-based access control into the Prism fabric, which is something that is going to come in version 5.0.
So as you can see, I have a list of catalog items over here. I can assign users, roles, etc. But let's go to projects and create a new project right now. So let me call one Vienna demo. I can add users to it. So let me just add myself as a user for this project. And this actually is connected to Active Directory. So I didn't even have, as you saw, I got auto-completion. I didn't have to type in the full name. This actually could consult Active Directory and get my user information directly from there. We only have one network over here, so I'll give myself access to that. And let me put some quotas. So I think 100 vCPUs, let's say a terabyte of storage, 100 gigs should be enough for a demo. So go ahead and save that. And at this point, as you can see, the Vienna demo project has been created. So I'll sign out again to log in as myself. And
so you're getting out of Prism Central?
No, I'm still in the self-service portal, remember. So this is the self-service portal where I was logged in as an administrator. I'm signing out as administrator, and I'll log back in as myself in just a second. OK. So I have my password and everything's auto-saved over here, so I should be able to just log right back in. Right, and now I have a few VMs already created, but let me create another one right now. We're going to create it from a VM template, so we have access to some catalog items. In this case, just one virtual image. This has the new AHV 2.0 technology that we were talking about, so we call it the turbocharged template. I don't have to search, I'll just pick that one, go next, give it a name, just call it Vienna VM. So this particular image already has disks associated with it, so I don't have to do anything about storage. The catalog, the image actually specified which disks have to be are attached to this particular VM. I have the wedge network that I have access to chosen by default, And I can do some advanced settings. So maybe I need 12 eCPUs and 16 gigs of memory. So go ahead and save that. And in just a second over here, this VM should pop up. Oh, there you go. That one popped up right away. So it's just taking a little bit of time. Because
I think it's
actually
those,
the previous one.
those vCenter VM cloning that was taking all those CPU resources.
Both of them popped up. We just had to be a little bit more patient. Okay, so that's the self-service portal. Okay. Now, one thing that you might wonder about is that with all these VMs that I'm creating, how does the administrator have a view into, when do they need to refresh their hardware? What do they need to plan for in the future? And again, if you go back to what we talked about Amazon, just like they invested a lot in machine intelligence to anticipate the needs of users, we have actually done the same. And I've invested a fair amount of work in machine intelligence with our new CrossFit technology algorithms. You'll see us do quite a bit with these algorithms in the future. At the present time, we have actually developed 2 applications around the CrossFit technology. We have capacity trending that we actually introduced in our 4.6 release, which essentially, based on usage, computes runways. So how much time do you have before you run out of CPU, memory, storage, given how you've been using your systems. But it does so in a way where your workload remains fairly static. Your workload does not change. And that's not really realistic. So with the 5.0 release, you're actually adding the ability for you to simulate workloads, essentially create models of new workloads that you want to add, and see how that might affect your runways with just-in-time forecasting. So let's take a look at that. So I can go back from here, and let me go back to the search interface. And see, again, I don't have to go through any menus. I can just search for runway, and I get back my runway over here as being about 365 days for the particular cluster I'm interested in, Surge, right? And I go to the capacity planning page over here. It's 365 plus days. CPU looks good, storage looks good, memory, all of them look good. But maybe I want to deploy a few more VMs. And I expect that my users will create, let's say, just create add workload over here.
But essentially, what we were going to show you guys is essentially the feature that we've been talking about for a while. We've shown this in Vegas as well. Essentially, the fact that you can now add new VM workloads and see what the impact to your system would be. And if you needed to add more hardware or cluster capacity up front before you moved VMs from your old environment to the Nutanix environment, you'll be able to see the impact of that as just-in-time forecasting. And that's part and parcel of the current capabilities that are going to be coming in version 5.0.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys, but maybe we can show it to you later on.
Rajiv is going to buy drinks later tonight for everybody. All right. Thank you. Am I supposed to kill something here? Okay. Anyway, we'll leave it to Binny. Let him figure it out. So let me transition to the second half of this, right? So we've talked about the one-click experience that powers a lot of Nutanix. Now, if you just think about what was the key capabilities that led to, and some of this you guys already know about what powered Amazon was that it was a single fabric across any workload, across any deployment. But in the case of Nutanix, to provide that same capabilities for the enterprise, we have to do the same thing plus one more, which is about the fact that in the enterprise, you have to provide choice of a series of capabilities, which we will talk about. So if you think about it, so let's start with the any workload capability. Now in Nutanix, as many of you know, obviously we started off with VMs, we expanded that to bare metal, we expanded that to files, we expanded that to containers now. Over the last 12 months, we have introduced almost 3 new products. AFS for Acropolis file services, ACS for container services, ABS for the block services. And all of them, though, across different types of applications, whether it be the traditional apps, the file apps, and the bare metal apps, you still have the same fabric from Nutanix. It's the same interface, one-click scale out, and all that capability. And if you're starting with, say, the one that's the most recent, which is Acropolis Block Services, which talks about leveraging your existing bare metal workloads instead of running a SAN separately for it, you can now essentially make the SAN invisible and connect your existing Oracle or SQL Server workloads natively into Nutanix. And the one net new thing, and it's taken us about 6 months of collaborative work with Oracle that we're now announcing today, is that Oracle has certified their database and their VMs to run natively on Nutanix ABS. It's a pretty big deal for us because both from a functional side as well as the performance side, you can now start aggregating your high-performance Oracle workloads directly into the Nutanix fabric, okay? And so, again, like I said, I think there is a particular session by Michael Webster. I would highly recommend you guys going into it. It tells you how many existing customers have already got Oracle deployed on Nutanix, even prior to the certification. And now with this, I think the floodgates are going to open up in terms of the expansion of Nutanix into the Oracle application workloads. Now, the other feature, which we've previewed for a while, which is actually now ready, because in terms of a tech preview, it's been out for the last 6 to 9 months, which is native file services, but driven in the classic software-driven fashion. A one-click scale-out, simple operations, allows you to consolidate your existing NAS boxes, especially under your Citrix farms for user files and directories, which is AFS, is going to be shipping as an FCS GA product in 5.0 with a lot more capacity and performance than we even talked about in the past. So that's the second silo that we are now consolidating. And if you think about it, the last silo, which is the emerging silo of next generation apps, was native container support, where they use Docker, Kubernetes to actually provision containers, but also provide stateful container support in terms of volume groups, in terms of actually providing storage capabilities natively from Nutanix into the container management side, right? And what is new here, which is in development, which is coming out a future release, is the fact that rather than use separate tools to manage this, you can now use Prism itself, and you probably saw a piece of that in Rajiv's demo, to actually manage not just VMs, but also containers, okay? So with that, you just have now a unified fabric across virtual, bare metal, files, and containers. And with these features, essentially, even though they're discrete products on top of the platform, built into the Nutanix fabric, AFS, ABS, ACS, and so forth. And before I get into the next step, the one thing that I do want to bring out is you have to look at these features. You have to look at these features not in comparison to NetApp or somebody else that's the incumbent. You have to look at these features in comparison to the next generation fabric out there, which is AWS. And if you look at their capabilities that they're shipping over time and the way that it's actually deployed, the way it's configured, the way it's scaled out, that's the essence of how we think about the evolution of the Nutanix fabric and these applications. That you can start small, start quickly, and pay as you grow, not just for VMs, but every other workload in the enterprise. So that's the power. That's the power of any workload on the Nutanix side. Now, obviously, you need to accomplish this across any deployment. We have talked about data centers. The thing that we have invested a lot of effort and money into is to ensure that the same fabric, the same delight can be accomplished both in the lower end of the market as well as in the branch offices, okay? So everyone knows about, obviously, the heft and the capabilities that Nutanix brings to the table in the core enterprise. But what we have invested in over the last 6 to 12 months is to actually bring that down, not just from a price point, but from an operational simplicity into the branch office. And something that's net new, that's coming in 5.0, and many of you guys have asked for it, is the fact that I can do a one-node backup. I don't need 3 more nodes to do a backup. Okay, it's a huge deal. And the fact that I can now go into Prism Central and with one click upgrade my 100 robo nodes out there. So that's the power that we're bringing to the table for these remote/branch office deployments, okay? And the last thing, something that we have announced and released, it's been shipping in the market, it's been very successful for the last quarter that it's been shipping, is the fact that Nutanix Express essentially is the mini version of Nutanix. The same delight, the same power of it, but configured and priced to actually hit the sweet spot for the lower end of the market, okay? So the point being, same software, same experience, different deployment form factors, right? So that's any workload, any deployment. And the last thing, and this is where we have to differ from the AWS or the public cloud aspect, is that we have to cater for the choice. And choice means a choice of runtime. And runtime across any of the hypervisors. Not only do we continue to double down and invest further in ESX and Hyper-V along with AHV, we have also introduced support for Zen Server in conjunction with our friends at Citrix, so that you can provide the same first-class experience for Zen Server, just like with any other hypervisor in our fabric, right? So one of the key things that you will see in our portfolio now is that any of the hypervisors will be wrapped with the same Acropolis mobility fabric capabilities, right? The fact that you can now natively start with any hypervisor, such as in your primary data center, you can start with ESX, but my secondary data center could be on AHV. I can start my production data center on ESX, and with one click, convert ESX to AHV so that I can have in-place upgrades done if I want to reduce my ELA spend and so forth. And then finally, as Rajiv mentioned, within the same one-click experience of Prism, you should be able to manage multiple hypervisors. And we're going to start with ESX and then extend it from there so that we can have the same consistent look and feel across any of the runtimes. So with any workload, any deployment, and across any runtime using the same single fabric provides us really strong foundation for us to talk about what is the core announcement for today, which is that most of us have come to ensure, as Dheeraj has mentioned, about truly understanding what convergence means across virtualization, compute, and storage, versus just shipping a sheet metal around it. And every customer out there, every partner out there, even employees, when people come into it, talk about it, so what's missing? What's next? And it's a pretty obvious thing, right? Which is, what about the network? And in the network, it's a little different than the storage and the compute side. In the network, the data plane is relatively commodity. L2 switching, L3 routing is more or less standardized out there, right? I mean, could we bring a switch into the Nutanix box and reduce some cables coming out? Probably. It's useful for some large deployments, but for the majority, the problem is not in the data plane. The problem is in the control plane for networking. And that's the core problem that we're trying to solve with one-click networks. That's going to be, you're going to see a chunk of that functionality in 5.0 and a series of features coming out later. But essentially, the ability to both visualize and orchestrate network services in the same one-click fashion that you've been able to do with compute and storage. And so when we talk about visualization, what is it, right? I mean, people come to us all the time and say, look, I go into Prism, I log into Prism, and I look at when a VM is slow, my compute and storage capabilities are mapped to that, but I don't know if the VM is slow because I'm dropping packets to the top of the rack switch. I just don't have that visibility. What if I could do that right now? What if it, manage the topology of my virtual and physical network directly inside Prism? That's the key new capability that we're bringing out in the upcoming release around visualization. But that's just one part. Once I visualize, I need to have control. I need to be able to orchestrate my network services, right? I need to be able to do this in such a way, and we're going to literally deliver these capabilities one after the other in the same framework over the next few releases. But essentially, what it means is that I can now simply provision a VLANs on the top of the rack switch from the core framework of Acropolis itself. Okay, we're going to show you how that's done and all that good stuff. I should be able to say when I spin up 10 more VMs, my load balancer pool should be automatically updated on F5 or NetScaler. Oh, by the way, when I want to insert a firewall into the fabric as service insertion and so forth, I should be able to seamlessly do that. And similarly, if I want to actually tap and monitor traffic, I should be able to insert taps as well, all within the same one-click fashion. This is the power of what we mean by saying network orchestration. And essentially, we have been working on this not just in isolation, as you can imagine, with various partners who are updating their technologies and their products to integrate into our network orchestration APIs so that we actually can provide this level of turnkey integration.